You can listen to The Front on your smart speaker every morning. To hear the latest episode, just say, "Play the news from The Australian."
From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Wednesday, June 26. Back renewables or prepare to be plunged into darkness. That's the warning to regional communities, which could face blackouts when coal exits the electricity grid in the late 2030s, according to a new roadmap from the Australian Energy Market Operator. A fresh drama for the Labor government, with one of its own senators crossing the floor for the first time in decades to vote against Labor. Senator Fatima Payman defied party leadership on immediate recognition of Palestinian statehood. Historically, members who cross the floor have been expelled from the party, but it's looking like Payman will keep her job. You can read Dennis Shanahan's expert analysis right now at theaustralian.com.au. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is on his way to Australia after pleading guilty to an espionage charge in order to get out of jail. Today, we go back to the beginning, the allegations of rape that sent Assange on the run, and how this hacker recast himself as a crusader for freedom. Before we begin, this episode contains allegations of sexual assault. Back in 2010, Julian Assange was a figure of international intrigue, the swashbuckling hacker turned publisher whose website WikiLeaks was dumping thousands of documents into the public domain, highly damaging secret military files that exposed the inner workings of America's war in Afghanistan. And then Assange was accused of rape. While he was working in Sweden, two young Swedish women who had met him in WikiLeaks circles accused Assange of having sex with them without using a condom, without their consent. One was Anna Ardin. She had hosted Assange in her home, and the pair had sex, in which she said Assange deliberately ripped a condom she'd asked him to wear and was violent towards her during sex. Assange denied both those allegations.
Jag förlåter gärna Julian Assange, men jag kan inte skapa den här försoningen själv.
In this interview with Swedish paper Svenska Dagbladet, Ardin, who's written a book about her allegations, said this: "We've used a voice actor to bring you the translation of her words."
I'm happy to forgive Julian Assange, but I can't create this reconciliation myself. I did my best to get this thing tried in court, but he stayed away. It affected my life immensely in the beginning. I had to quit my job, I had to move out of my apartment, I was even hidden abroad for a period. I also got a lot of support, and it's helped me move on. And I think I've become a stronger person in this process.
Another woman, known only as Miss W, had consensual sex with Assange using a condom, but said she had awoken the following morning to find him having sex with her again, this time without the condom she'd asked him to use. This action, removing a condom, is now known as stealthing, and over the past decade has been formally criminalised throughout Australia and much of the Western world. In Queensland, this offence carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. Assange has always denied wrongdoing and said his contact with the women was consensual. He was questioned by local police, but he left Sweden for the UK before he could be charged. Swedish authorities formally arrested him in absentia in September 2010. Swedish courts issued a European arrest warrant, and the international policing agency Interpol issued a red notice, a note to police around the world indicating a person is wanted for extradition. Assange, by now in London, was arrested by London's Metropolitan Police and remanded in custody, whereupon numerous supporters, including Jemima Khan, helped him post hundreds of thousands of dollars in bail. British courts issued an extradition warrant, rejecting Assange's arguments the Swedish prosecution was politically motivated. Assange appealed to Britain's High Court. His lawyers argued the women had consented to sex and that his conduct might have been unpleasant, but if committed in London, would not have been a crime. His lawyer, Ben Emerson KC, said Assange may have seemed disreputable, discourteous, disturbing, or even pushing towards the boundaries of what they were comfortable with, but he was not a criminal. Here's a voice actor with Ben Emerson KC's words as spoken in court. He's speaking about the second woman who says she awoke to find Assange having sex with her without a condom.
She may not have enjoyed the experience, but she clearly consented to it.
The High Court rejected Assange's arguments, ruling Swedish authorities could order his return to Sweden. Assange was defiant.
I have not been charged with any crime in any country. No doubt there will be many attempts made to try and spin these proceedings as they occurred today, but they are merely technical.
While all this was going on, WikiLeaks continued. In 2011, the Walkley Foundation in Australia gave WikiLeaks and Assange an award for an outstanding contribution to journalism after they published a video showing American forces killing civilians and 2 Reuters journalists in Baghdad. That sparked a fierce debate. Was this accused rapist and self-proclaimed crusader actually a journalist at all? James Madden is the Australian's media editor.
I think it's cut and dried, actually, Claire. I do not believe what WikiLeaks does can be considered journalism for the simple fact that journalists have an obligation to the readers and the public to present information in its relevant context. That is a responsibility that falls upon the shoulders of journalists and media companies and news outlets. And WikiLeaks' MO has to date simply been obtaining documents and publishing them, troves of documents at a time, without sifting through these documents to present the information within in journalism form.
WikiLeaks prided itself on presenting entire caches of material without editing or redaction. That meant the most sensitive diplomatic communications were suddenly out in the open, including the names of human rights leaders, dissidents, spies, informants, and others who were secretly dealing with the US in places like Iraq. In 2010, human rights organisations including Amnesty International begged WikiLeaks to redact the names of Afghans who were working with the Americans, after the Taliban said it was going through the documents on WikiLeaks to identify and eliminate collaborators.
That information or that fact, Claire, doesn't always garner a lot of publicity when defenders of Assange are talking about the merits of his and WikiLeaks journalism. But the truth is, professional journalists take extraordinary steps to defend the privacy and, by extension, the safety of people about whom they're writing. And a lot of consideration goes into presenting information in a responsible way.
Then Assange went into hiding, and unlike most people accused of being sex offenders, he was suddenly hailed as a hero. Assange claimed he was afraid that the Swedish judicial process could end in him being extradited to the United States over all those classified US documents. In 2012, he sought asylum in the London Embassy of Ecuador, a South American republic, and that's where he stayed for 7 years, in the embassy, refusing to emerge in case he was arrested and sent back to Sweden to face the rape charges. In 2019, after much legal back and forth, Sweden dropped the charges, saying too much time had expired, although the women have never recanted their claims. Assange was triumphant.
7 years without charge. Why my children grew up without me. That is not something that I can forgive.
Yeah, children. It later emerged Assange had formed a romance with a Swedish-Spanish woman, Stella Morris, and fathered 2 kids while inside the embassy.
He's not a criminal. He's not a dangerous person. He's a gentle intellectual, a thinker, and a journalist, and those people are not the people who belong in prison.
In April 2019, the Ecuadorians revoked his asylum. They said Assange had been a terrible houseguest, abusing staff, hacking into their computer systems, meddling in Ecuador's relationships with other countries, and even leaving the faeces of his cat and himself on the floors and walls of the embassy. The Metropolitan Police stormed the embassy and dragged Assange out. A bizarre scene on the quiet streets of London as Assange shouted the UK must resist pressure to extradite him.
UK must resist. UK resist. No worries.
Scotland Yard arrested him for failing to appear in court over the rape allegation. Until now, the US had not moved on Assange at all. But in 2019, once he was out of the embassy, the Americans finally revealed they did want him. He'd been indicted by a US grand jury for conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. Coming up, how Julian Assange recast himself as not an accused rapist, but a freedom fighter. At theaustralian.com.au right now, we've got a range of wildly differing opinions about Assange. You can check out our contest of ideas and make up your own mind by joining our subscribers at theaustralian.com.au. We'll be back after this break. Belmarsh is the maximum security prison where Julian Assange has been for the past 1,901 days, just over 5 years. His family and advocates have complained Assange's mental and physical health were under desperate strain. So, why was he in jail? Initially, he was sentenced to 50 weeks for breaching bail over the Swedish rape allegations. British prosecutors said he'd illegally entered the embassy to avoid extradition to Sweden. Assange released a statement apologising for his conduct. We've used a voice actor.
I apologise unreservedly to those who consider that I have disrespected them by the way I have pursued my case. This is not what I wanted or intended.
In early 2019, after about a month behind bars, Assange was charged with an additional 17 counts under the United States Espionage Act, relating to hundreds of thousands of leaked, classified US documents covering the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And in 2020,
Julian Assange has been denied bail by a judge at a London court. The WikiLeaks founder was hoping to leave prison 2 days after the same judge rejected a request for extradition to the United States.
the judge said Assange couldn't be trusted to show up in court if he was given bail and ordered him to remain in Belmarsh while the extradition proceedings played out. Then, in December 2021, another twist.
Julian Assange is a step closer to being extradited to America after the US government won its bid to overturn a UK court decision.
Assange appealed to the UK Supreme Court and failed. In April 2022, the US got its wish.
A British court has issued an order to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States.
If convicted on all charges, Assange faced up to 175 years in an American prison. Just a month ago, another British court granted Assange one last chance to appeal the extradition order. And then, on Sunday, a deal was announced. Assange agreed to plead guilty to one charge of espionage, conspiring to unlawfully obtain and disseminate classified national defence information. He was released from Belmarsh and boarded a plane to Saipan in the Northern Mariana Islands, a US Pacific territory, where a judge will handle the formalities. That was also part of the negotiation to avoid Assange setting foot on the US mainland. the Americans have agreed to drop 18 espionage charges against Assange, and he'll be sentenced to 62 months in prison. But his time already served in Belmarsh will be counted. It's expected that after sentencing, he'll leave the Marianas for Australia, his homeland. The Albanese government, which has campaigned for his release, will welcome Assange. In the US, the Biden administration, which continued Donald Trump's pursuit of Assange, will be relieved to see the last of him. And the big question, what now for the hacker-turned-activist who says he's only ever sought to expose the truth? Thanks for joining us on The Front. You can check out all our journalism right now at theaustralian.com.au.